in June 23rd, 1972, during the Hurricane Agnes flood here. If you can see that dike over there, the water went over the top of that and actually washed out portions of it and took out whole blocks of the city. So if we were on this bridge then, we might be standing in water. But the force and stuff, all that show there, that was all factories back in 1972. This is all since been built. Factories all tore down. It was all glassworks factories, and it flooded through all the factories and back down into town. But the water would have been over that concrete wall you can see there, and it was raging.
What river is this, honey?
This is the Chemung at this point. The Chemung is formed. The flood that took our house out, or flooded our house, was the Tioga coming out of Pennsylvania up in there in Presho. And it comes towards Gang Mills, and where Gang Mills got really slammed was coming towards Gang Mills, the can of steel feeds the Tioga, and then the Tioga runs into the Cohocton just right near between Painted Post and Gang Mills, which forms the Chemung, and then the Chemung eventually empties into the Susquehanna River. And all the rain to the west and of here was feeding this way. The rivers actually flow north and to the east and then back south. And with all the steep valleys and stuff, it concentrated all the water, and it just was horrendous. Here's Gang Mills, Weaver Hollow. Our house is like right up Curtis Creek, right in here, that landing lot. Oh, there's Irwin Pond right there. So we're like right here, but my house and Presho would have been way over here.
The heavy rains and 80-mile-an-hour winds of Hurricane Agnes hit the northwest coast of Florida near Panama City today. Storm tides flooded streets and towns along a 50-mile stretch of the Florida coast. However, the storm began to dissipate rapidly, and there were no reports of any more deaths.
Now for 3 straight days. New York's Allegheny and Steuben counties are hardest hit, an area about 85 miles south of Buffalo. The Allegheny River alone has risen more than 16 feet since the rain began. Hundreds of acres of farmland washed away, thousands of homes underwater, hundreds of families evacuated.
Along the east coast because of Tropical Storm Agnes, which has turned out to be more dangerous than anyone had expected. The U.S. Weather Bureau believes the flooding from the Gulf Coast to New York is the most geographically extensive in the country's history. It is still raining in most places from the Carolinas to New York State, and rivers throughout the area are flooding. The Potomac, Ohio, Allegheny, Susquehanna, Monongahela, and Schuylkill, and in Virginia, the James River is higher than it's ever been.
On June 23rd, 1972, the water probably would have been about right here.
That's crazy.
Right, well, someplace probably right about here. And if we walk through some of these stores, you can find these little blue things with a line that says flood level, June 23rd, 1972. So here we are, we're on the Tioga River, and this right here was an old bridge abutment. I don't know how old. It was no bridge here when I was a kid back in the 60s and 70s, so probably the 40s or 50s or before, probably taken out with a flood. But this was our big this is the local swimming hole when I was a kid. Our house was down the river on the left bank, about 1.5 miles or so. And you can see how calm this river is. There's a hole here, but there's many parts of the river you can walk across. So this is the river that flooded my house. If we were standing here in the 72 flood, the water was probably at or above that abutment in this area. I'd say above, because our church, which is right behind us, actually got flooded, and that's up a little bit. But this river was just a raging torrent through here, and it just carried everything that it was picking up upstream, houses and buildings and all kinds of trees that was washing out, came down through here and then flooded off. And we'll just give you a shot of the area where I lived next. You can see it was just flat farmland. Here, that bridge didn't get washed out in this flood. But my dad said in the previous flood, I think back in the 40s or 50s, was a different bridge that did get washed out. So, but I bet during the flood, this river wasn't much below that bridge. So this is now known as Indian Hills Road. In my day, when I lived here, it was called Presho Road. And there you can see the river. This was all underwater. You can see if we get a better shot. The river's to the right. All these houses and through here were all flooded. Lots of things some of them were actually washed out and ended up down a ways in my grandfather's field. The golf course here, where I worked as a kid, was all underwater, washed out several greens. Yeah, if we were here during the 72 flood, we'd probably be underwater or very dang close. Definitely the truck would have been in water. Whether it's over our heads, I don't know. And coming up right down here, right starting about here, is where our farm was. Right here was where our farm started. It was long and narrow. You can't see. To the left is the building, and it's all overgrown. And we might be able to do this from here when we come. You can't see the house. It's behind the trees, not the blue house. That's our neighbors. Right here, the white house back in the thing. And if you can see the porch roof, the water was almost to the top of that porch roof, but it took it out, moved the house and everything. And then the river is just to the right of us. So in the 72 flood, the water here would have probably been just over the top of my head sitting in the truck. But it was moving, and it was tons of debris. So stuff was floating through these fields here. I should bring the drone.
Tell them what you did as a kid when they basically told you your house was unlivable. What did your dad do?
Oh, he rebuilt it. He moved it back on the foundation. It got twisted off about 1.5 feet. He pulled it back on using my grandfather's tractor and my uncle's big tractor with a cable, and jacked it up and rollers and stuff. And he fixed it back up. Get off the road here while some people's come by.
And what did y'all live in the meantime?
We actually got a HUD trailer and put it in the front for over a year. But once we got enough stuff done on the house, I lived upstairs in the house while the rest of the family lived down there.
In the HUD trailer, which would be FEMA nowadays.
Yeah. These fields here are my grandfather's, and you can see this little, can you get that at the end of all that?
That little red barn?
The barn wasn't there, that's a new barn. But that white garage was my grandfather's garage. And you can see how that was up on a hill. The water did not get up there. But to the right of that, you see all those trees? That was just full of buildings and debris because the river.
Explain to everyone exactly where your family went, where y'all evacuated to.
So when it started rising on Thursday, the water started coming up in here. My parents started putting stuff in the second floor and moving things. And we went up here to my grandfather and grandmother's house up there on that ridge. And we sat all afternoon. In fact, a story that came back when I was thinking about this is we had got up there. My dad was still doing stuff, and he came out of the road went down and came up here with our a white station wagon, which you'll see in a picture, Deanna Puss. And he was coming down this road, and we were watching, and the car stalled. And the car stalled on the highway because he was in water that was 2 or 3 feet deep. My grandfather jumped on his tractor, which was high, came down here and hooked on him and towed him up to the house.
Oh, I hadn't heard that story.
I forgot all about that. And so we stayed up there, and it's still pouring raining all the time, and the water's coming up. During the night, because the highway was higher, some firemen or policemen came in and walked up and told us we had to leave. So we evacuated my grandparents' house at night. They went and stayed with my aunt, their daughter, and we went and stayed with my mom's mother, on First Street in Corning, which was right there, and that's where we spent the next couple of days while the flood was happening.
And that's where y'all were when you looked out back and the town was flooded and the
railroad bridge fell into the river.
Explain what you saw when you saw the railroad bridge.
Well, if I can remember right, they had pulled a bunch, which they did, they pulled a bunch of coal cars on it to hold it. And the water just got so high that it just kind of took the bridge and it fell over. And it almost looked like it hit the water, bounced up a little, and then it fell into the river.
You want to talk just a minute about the cleanup?
Yeah, afterwards, we could get back, and we finally, I think we must have stayed with my grandmother. I don't remember all the details. But it was just a mess, and the worst part was the mud. There seemed to be about an inch of mud for every foot of water, and so our whole first floor was flooded. A ton of mud, and all I did that summer, because it happened on 23rd, through the whole summer, all we did was clean stuff. Things that, you just kept washing. Once we got the pump going again on our well, we just constantly were rinsing and washing and drying stuff and trying to sort stuff out. Of course, anything wood swelled and fell apart, and we got refrigerators going back and anything we could, and stripped the house and washed it out. And oh my gosh, that's all I did all summer that I remember was clean things, clean mud off stuff.
Okay, Bill, you've had a couple weeks. We've seen the documentary.
Yep.
We have looked at pictures of your family and the times during the Hurricane Agnes flood when you were 15. Is there any thoughts, feelings, extra stories that you haven't told that you might want to tell now?
Yeah, I think one thing that when we watched that documentary, I was surprised how emotional I felt. It brought back a lot of memories and feelings, I think, and I think the hardest part was it was 50 years ago, a half a century ago. I was 15, and what my family went through that year was, I guess it kind of sticks to you. I forgot a lot of it, but then you don't lose that emotion of it, I think. The other thing is, talking to my brothers and sisters, they don't remember quite as much. They were considerably younger and stuff. And also driving around the spots that were flooded and look at it today going, it's hard to imagine what that couple days was like back then. So, don't wish that kind of day on anybody, and so many hundreds of thousands of people. Deanna has found and linked the documentary. I think it's through PBS or something. If you get a chance, watch it. It's pretty interesting. I know maybe boring to some people, but if you've never lived through that, or if you especially did live through something like that, it may be interesting. As you can tell, we're out right now walking on the piece of property we bought, and after this, you're going to see some updates. So it's kind of ironic, we're standing here now in the property we bought, and supposedly this is the highest point on this hill. I guess you call it Smith Hill Road. But I doubt I'll ever live or buy property that's in the river bottom again. And one last little story is that flood was in 72. 1975, I graduated high school and gone to college. In late September of 75, the Tioga River flooded our valley again, and we had water 4 feet in the first floor of the house. It wasn't as destructive. We didn't lose as many buildings. Lost a car, my dad couldn't get out and stuff. I still can remember in the middle of the night, early in the morning, getting a call saying, hey, don't get concerned if you see it on the news. Your parents are okay and the family, but there's flooding there. So I went home that weekend, and several weekends I would drive back and forth and help. And I think it was at that point that my dad finally said, I'm done. And he bought land up on Manley Hill in Lindley. And he's never lived in the floodplain again either. So I hope you all enjoy this. It was kind of interesting, 50 years ago, of what my life was like. Well, one pile done, just about. That's pretty good.
Was weed eating, and he almost didn't see these guys before it was too late, but he did. So now we've marked it with a rock to remind us not to get too close with the weed eater.
Taking a break for a second to show you that we actually have some paths where we can actually walk a little easier to different parts of the property. Just a couple of weeks ago, they were all full and lush of leaves, and the gypsy moths have just devoured them. There's a few trees they don't seem to like that seem to still have their leaves. This one being one of them. This one has a lot of leaves. But not for long if these guys have anything to say about it, because now they've discovered this tree. So I've spent the day clearing this area and uncovered 2 baby hemlocks. Well, what they say about gypsy moths, and I'm learning a little bit all the time, they devour the leaves of a deciduous tree. More than likely, they won't decimate it. It will come back. There'll be a second growing of leaves, and then they're probably going to be fine. It's the pine trees and the hemlocks. They get on those and start eating those. They don't have a second growth of needles, and it will kill them. So both of these have them on them. I've already sprayed that small tree there. They don't seem to have discovered our big hemlock yet. That's good.
Remember it was down in Wellsboro what they made ship masts out of.
Oh, that's right.
See, look how tall that is.
So Bill says this one right beside the hemlock is a white pine. But today we have basically been clearing, picking up sticks. Yesterday was when the skid steer was here with the grappling hook,
and moved that huge pile. I'll insert a picture, a before picture, and then the huge pile over there, and moved a lot of things back over in that part of the property. So if you're wondering what the post and the flags are for, it's to mark stumps. Okay, I set my work gloves down somewhere. I don't know where. I think I'd take time to go find them, but You like my fashion statement? I have my socks tucked into my pants to keep the bugs from crawling up my pant legs. Yeah. Okay, so Bill extended the pad so that we can move the table further that direction, away from the fire and away from the parking lot.
Today was driveway building. So what I did is yesterday and this morning I dug out this area where you see all the rock. I took, I don't know how much dirt out, but at least, well, down to the original soil and all the muck and the sticks. I dug it all out, and then I just pulled all that big rock that was over there. I pulled and pushed it in here to make a good base, and then we'll start adding bases on top of that, road base and more rock. And hopefully this will stabilize the soil and we won't have any big soft spots.
And right about there is where it's going to curve, the driveway.
Yep, the stake that got run over.
A better angle of what he did.
Yeah,
He really stretched that driveway up further.
And I defined the edges.
And he defined the edges. Looks very nice. It's very squared off. I like it.